Shabbat Shalom. I wanted to do something a little different tonight. And we'll see how it goes. But we find this variety of elements in Chayei, this week's Parshat. We see the story of Abraham purchasing the land and burying Sarah, of him sending his servant to find Rebekah for Isaac, of the incredible meeting of Rebekah and Isaac, in which is implied that Rebekah has healed a broken part of Isaac. And we see Abraham remarry, a fact that is not often commented on, but makes me really happy that Abraham manages to find love and happiness after some of the more tragic events of his family. And tradition teaches us, by the way, that the woman Abraham remarries is Hagar, which is a coda to her story I believe we don't discuss enough. And in the midst of this, we see this line, Genesis 24:1. It says, V'Avraham zaken, baba yamim. And Abraham was old, full of days. Now, I'm a fan of this line, so we're going to zoom in on it a bit, both today and in Torah study tomorrow. And some of you may know that Rashi opens his commentary on the entire Jewish canon with the phrase, right? Eina mikra zeh omar ela darsheni, right? This verse says nothing but drash me, or explain me. That's what the verse says to our commentators. But what's bothering us about this verse? What is it about Abraham was old, full of days, that needs to be explained? Because indeed, on this exact verse, by the way, the Midrash, our commentators, they have a field day. They have a grand old time. What's our warrant, our way in? What is it about this? There are no redundancies in Torah. There are no extra words. And Abraham was old, full of days. It's not a mere turn of phrase, right? You think this is a repeated meaning? But to commentators, the Torah is not being poetic, right? Each word has a reason. Why would we say this then? Someone was old, full of days. Enter our Midrash to explain it. Breshit Rabbah, this first century work of contemporary to the Mishnah, right? We have this line, right? Amar Rabbi Acha. His name was literally Rabbi Acha, right? So you have a person for whom is old and yet is not full of days, right? And you have people full of days but who are not old, right? In this rare situation, you had someone who had both. That's all well and good, but what exactly does that mean? Okay, so there are some people who are old and there are some people who are full of days, and occasionally we manage to hit both, like in the case of Abraham. 2,000 years later, the rabbi of the Warsaw Ghetto, who died, I think in Treblinka actually later, stepped up to explain, right? And he said, if it is your wish, if it's your wish to connect to the divine, to raise yourself to higher consciousness in this world, let me give you the basics. Don't stand at your 70th birthday the same person you were at your bar or bat mitzvah. Rather, he says, do this. And he gets quite specific here. Right? It's a spiritual practice, and he's going to make it very clear. Imagine for yourself, if your name is, and an example is Ruvain, but we could pick any name, Sabian, for example. Imagine if a bar mitzvah. Imagine what kind of Ruvain you will be next year. What will your achievements be? What will this imaginary Ruvain's engagement and qualities be? This person you imagine will be a way to measure yourself, always checking how far you are from reaching. Are your daily prayers, is your self-development, is your growth at a pace that allows you to become that Ruvain next year, he asked? And if the next year arrives, and if you measure yourself, and you have not even reached even a quarter of that Ruvain's level, he says, let it be in your eyes as if you have, God forbid, not achieved a long life. Because only that last year's Ruvain is alive, and not this year's one. And he said, how do we know this? He said, this is the meaning of the verse, V'Avraham zaken, baba yamim, and Abraham was old, full of days. From this, we know that today's Abraham was there and not yesterday's. There's something amazing to me about the way rabbis in our tradition have managed to, in what seems like an insignificant verse, I kid, of course, there are no insignificant verses, they find an incredible truth about life. You should want to take inspiration from your ancestor Abraham. Of course, you want to be righteous, you want to do good things. But they say also, you really want to take inspiration from Abraham, you got to pack each day full of life and pack a whole life full of days. Because there's nothing new under the sun, I couldn't help but be reminded, as I read this, of the famous speech of Sir William Osler, who's a famous practical joker. He's also the founder of modern medicine. I wish to point out, he says in his essay, A Way of Life, a path in which the wayfaring person, though perhaps a fool, cannot err. Not a system to be worked out painfully, only to be discarded, not some formal scheme, simply a habit as easy or as hard to adopt as any other habit, good or bad. This way of life, I preach, is a habit to be acquired gradually by long and steady repetition. It is the practice of living for the day only and for the day's work, to put your entire life in day-tight compartments. That's it. That's the whole drash, and I'm sharing this with you because, not because I figured this out, by the way, but because I read it and it calls to me. I read it and I feel like I need to work on it quite badly myself. In this line, in this Parsha this week, our tradition teaches us, zoom in on a line, on a day, to live life in these day-tight compartments, to be present in the moments that we find ourselves in, that we might reach old age and realize we've lived a life full of days. Shabbat Shalom.